You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, our latest season that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show has been around for 16 years. Going on 2,500 episodes. What are you going to do with that information? I don't know, but refer it to your family, friends, and relatives. Tell people to go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may buy advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book's success. Today we're going to be talking about some interesting new programs that you can do to maybe lose weight and exercise. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up at this point. We have a young man on the show. We're going to be talking about his new book, Sir Gusztáv's Arlow's Sabre Fencing Austro-Hungarian Sabre Series, Volume 3, out April 7th, 2022 by Russ Mitchell. We're going to be talking about some of the intricate details of saber fencing and maybe how you can enjoy it too as well. So we're going to get into it with him. We're going to talk to him about some of those insights and his latest book that you can find on Amazon there as well. Gusztáv Arlow's work represents perhaps the point where Hungarian public sees a well-known, well-established, and well-respected fencer come forward to discuss the merits of the Italian, that is to say, Rebellion fencing method, simultaneously discussing with the integration with elements of Hungarian saber fencing. Arlow, previously an adherent to the so-called the high-tier system, lays out the case for Italian fencing in his translated manual, which contains extensive commentary on the art of fencing. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir? Russ?
Great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you as well. Give us .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
So the easiest ways to find me are on YouTube and on Patreon. So there is patreon.com. I've got a profile. I can shoot you the link on that directly. I'm assuming you don't want me to read out the letters and numbers on the podcast.
Yeah, and then we'll put the link also on the Chris Voss Show so people can find it on there in the .coms. Give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside this book.
All right, so here's a guy who's at the top of his game in terms of fencing. He is an aristocrat, which is important before World War I. He is well respected. He is teaching fencing publicly, and people take what he says very, very seriously. And along come these Italian guys with their newfangled thing, and they go into the place where saber fencing is a religion like Friday night football here is in Texas. And Gusztáv Arlow goes, hey, what we're doing, it's not good enough. We need to do what they're doing and add what we do to the mix and change it up. And to say that's an earthquake is putting it really mildly. It's like saying, hey, we should stop, should put some rugby rules into our Friday night football.
And I guess fencing is the way people, engage, entertain, exercise back in the day, maybe, get ready for battle, war, that sort of thing, I guess.
Battle, war, duels, and just for sports. In fact, some people considered it a performing art as well as a fine art. So you had an audience of thousands of people who knew all about fencing, and they expected to see good shit when two different people fought each other on a piece. So they followed it the same way our sports fans do.
So it was, it was the thing. It was like maybe boxing back in the day or NFL football back in the day, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think they televised football yet back then, so I think that was the issue. I hadn't quite caught on. Now, you basically, I don't have the pronunciation of this right, I'm sure, but you practice a method of fencing, starts with an F. Can you pronounce that right for me and tell us about what that is?
So I practice what's called historical fencing. So Olympics in general is basically a sports league. And it is a kind of fencing that lets you work with a very specific set of sports so people can compete on even terms. Just as, for example, different MMA leagues have different rules for how they engage. So what I do is historical saber fencing, and I do a system of hussar fencing and pre-Olympic historical saber fencing.
I usually do chain link fencing. That's usually what I focus on a lot. But maybe that's a different thing than what you're talking about.
You can roll the most fence at once, you win. That's how that game works.
I just put up a fence between the guy with the sword, and then I can avoid getting stabbed. That's my trick.
As long as the links are small.
As long as the links are, yeah, because that's right. I've seen fencing done, and it's really an interesting art. Well, I don't know if art's the right way to describe the sport. I've got a friend who is wheelchair bound, and she does fencing, and they have wheelchairs, and I guess they lock down the wheelchair so they can't move too much, and she fences. And I was like, that's an interesting choice, but hey, man, it's a wide world with lots of cool stuff to do, and I think it's great that stuff like that's available to everybody. And so she does fencing, and she's in a wheelchair, and I'm just like, I wouldn't do fencing standing up because I might get stabbed. So you're a part-time professor, you're a fencing coach, and you're a veteran of the historic European martial arts movement that has been actively involved in finding and publishing historical fencing manuscripts since 1996. What drew you to that?
So I was a nerd a very long time ago. I'm still one now, just to be very clear. And my dad noticed that when we had various games lying around that I tended to pay a lot of attention to the various weapons described in the games. And I sort of nerded out on the geometry of all the different tools involved. And I got into, you want to hear a phrase that will kill any cocktail party instantly?
Sure.
I got into medieval 14th century Central European warfare.
That's on my Tinder profile. That explains why no one picks me.
I was working in history and looking through medieval history and medieval warfare and trying to solve problems like that. And that was about the time that a bunch of people were going, hey, we have European martial arts manuscripts. Wouldn't it be cool if somebody could read them? And so I started helping to dig them out of archives and transcribe them and translate them and put them in front of people so they could do more than just look at the pictures and guess a lot.
Oh, wow.
And that's been a hobby and an avocation for 30 years now.
Now, you've written a lot of different books, or I guess help translate or record a lot of, or redo a lot of books and bring them into the forefront. Is that, how many books do you have?
I got about 26 books in print. Wow. The majority of them are different translated fencing manuals.
And so all these manuals were from back in the day. They teach people how to do the sports. They'd probably like modern day NFL training manuals or something. Now, I believe your wife helps you do some of this translation. Tell us how that works.
Okay, so it works very carefully, and I buy her a lot of cappuccino afterwards. Some of the languages involved, and German and Hungarian are among the worst offenders like this, went through a lot of language shifts at the end of the 19th century. Although I'm not a slacker when it comes to languages, there are a lot of times where a native speaker is really, really helpful. So I call myself an editor, but my job is basically to work with the original person and get it into something resembling English. And then because I cut my teeth editing historical documents by scholars who are European, my job is to take that very raw thing and turn it into actual English. So anybody who translates in school, you translate word for word for word, but real world translation isn't like that. You're translating an idea and you're putting it in the words that people can actually read so they don't fall asleep trying to read your stuff. Yeah. So the back half of the translation work and then all of the apparatus and the lots of commentary and stuff is what I do, especially because I know the technical terms of fencing, and some of the folks I work with aren't actually fencers.
Now, is your wife Hungarian or is she European? She knows these languages?
She's an American citizen now, but yeah, she's Hungarian. I stole it from Buddha.
Did you do that on purpose so you could write these books? I'm just joking.
I did it so I could get the Hungarian cooking.
Oh, hey, good food, man. You can't beat a good cook and good food. So what inspired you to write this? I guess this is a series. Is that correct? Since this is volume 3. Tell us about this series.
This series is about understanding the history of saber fencing. So when we get into Olympic fencing, everybody pays attention to the saber and looks at Hungarian stuff because they're Hungarian coaches. And for 20 or 30 years, the Hungarians just wipe the walls with everybody, except the Italians, who they sometimes wipe the walls with and sometimes they play even with. Oh, wow. And so in Hungarian saber fencing, the Italians were really influential for a while. So we have what's called Italo-Hungarian saber fencing. Mm-hmm. But we have almost no documentation, just a lot of oral history about how this process came to pass. So imagine you're looking at your sport of choice and you've got lots of documentation from, say, 1970, and you don't know why the old-timey boxers stanced the way they boxed, and you're trying to understand what was different in the rules or what was different in the technique. This series is bringing those primary sources out to people so they can understand it, and so for those who are interested, so they can practice it and put it into play.
Do people, what draws people to fencing these days? Is it is it exercise, the art of it, the challenge, the skill that's involved?
So it's a combination of all of that. I tend to call fencing exercise with benefits because you're picking up a technical skill. And when you're doing that, and ask anybody who has a really technical sport in their background, you tend to actually work out harder than when you're just busting reps or distance.
Yeah.
So you're intellectually extremely engaged. In the process, have you ever seen a little kid with a stick? Sword fighting is a really big part of our general society. As soon as any kid gets a stick, they start swinging it at some other kid with a stick, right?
Yeah.
That romance has never gone away. And it's tends to pull people into fencing.
Wasn't that Errol Flynn back in the day that inspired a lot of people? Was it Errol Flynn?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, he was a great fencer, wasn't he? Or maybe he was just all in movies.
He was a good fencer. Now, stage combat and fencing are a little bit different.
Sure.
Things that will get you ganked in regular fencing look perfect on screen. Things that look perfect on screen don't go the other way, because stage combat's point is to tell a story using the swords, right? Yeah. So they want to show the audience, where we want to do is deceive them and then poke them and giggle.
I remember there was a James Bond did a fencing scene, I think somewhere. I don't remember which Bond it was, but maybe there might have been multiple Bonds. But
it's been a hot minute. I would have to look that one up. You've got me, boss.
Yeah. I believe it was, I don't think it was Pierce Brosnan. I think it was Dalton. We'll Google it. So in the meantime, you discuss in this book a particular portion of the art based upon this gentleman named Arlow. And what makes him interesting, and what's important about this method that he utilizes?
Okay, so Arlow came from very traditional Hungarian fencing of the day, which mostly moved from the wrist, and it was really beating out most of the other methods of its era because it was really simple and intuitive. So if I'm defending myself, and I'll hold my hand up for those who are actually catching this on video, the people who are just listening will have to imagine it. I've got my hand up in the air and my point is sticking out towards someone's face, so I've got a threat. But the geometry of the stance means all I've literally got to do is turn my wrist one way or another, and I immediately have any parry I need. And I can teach someone how to parry in this system to defend themselves in the space of about 10 minutes flat, which means it's simple, it's intuitive, it's easy to learn, it's ridiculously effective. Arlow's good at it. He's got lots of cachet. He's teaching. He's one of the first sports fencing instructors who teaches women, which makes him near and dear to my heart. And he goes up against a bunch of guys who are Italian because he comes with a new teacher named Barbasetti. And being at the absolute top of his game and super respected, he goes, these guys are doing something different and we need to learn from it. And what the Italians did different was they moved from the elbow, but most importantly, from a sports perspective, they thought of it the way we think of modern sports. So if I can steal a metaphor from the general martial arts community, one of the reasons MMA is popular and effective is people get lots of pressure testing in. You go to any MMA gym, and it doesn't matter what your background style is. You have common rules. You can go, you can mix it up, you can play. Well, under that pressure testing that the Italians were doing, they were getting better and better and better. Whereas people from smaller schools tended to be the big fish in their little school, but not get so much pressure testing. So Arlow learned a lot of stuff from the Italians, and he said, hey, let's make something that's better than both of them. And he took the best features of Italian and Hungarian fencing at the time, and he blended them together.
Now, I pulled the Google poll on this. It was Die Another Day with Pierce Brosnan as Bond. And there was a duel, I believe it was a sword fight duel. So I don't know if that qualifies in the same sort of fencing sort of thing. It looks like it starts out as fencing and then they go to swords or something. I don't know. But yeah, great scene there. And I remember seeing it going, that's a really cool art form. And then
we tend to think of fencing as the Olympic thing, but that doesn't define all sword play. I mean, kendo, for example, is fencing. It's just a very different kind of fencing.
Is that with the wood sticks?
Yeah, that's what the bamboo shinai wood sticks when they come at each other wearing the armor. So there's lots of different kinds of fencing. And what Brosnan's doing in the movie absolutely qualifies as as fencing, just not the Olympic sport league version of fencing.
Yeah. It's acting. So acting as this SNL gentleman would say it. I forget his name. Now you how early did the Olympics adopt fencing? Was it one of the first sports when they launched Olympics?
Yes, it was. Fencing is one of the original sports to it. They almost had horseback saber, but after World War I, they were shy on horses, so that went away.
Oh, wow.
I think we would have a lot more spectators if it was still horseback saber fencing.
Yeah, that would be wild to watch. It's because you gotta negotiate the horses and get close enough to bang swords, right?
Absolutely.
But imagine that's what happened.
Mad teenagers on bicycles, and that's fun too.
Yeah. Or skateboarding. Maybe skateboarding might be cool. Maybe that's could be a new Olympic sport there. Skateboarding, fencing. I don't know. Sounds like somebody's getting injured for sure. Get your insurance now, folks. So it really changed the game, it sounds like, for the sport of fencing and maybe for, you said, I think it was the Italians or the Hungarians that adopted this?
It really did, because when you bring a modern sports perspective to your practice, you train differently. You can hit harder, you pay more attention to some details that you otherwise wouldn't worry about, because if you're winning in your local school, hey, you must be good. But then you get in front of 50 people from a bunch of other schools, and then you discover, oh, maybe I'm just kicking superficial ass, and I need to train the places where I've got holes a little bit harder.
Yeah. I'm a big Raiders fan. Did Al Davis ever own a fencing thing? And he'd just be like, just win, baby.
I am not going to get myself in front of all those Raider fans by opining there. I know what's good for me.
Okay. We're used to losing anyway, so I mean, we need all the help we can get. But we got Tom Brady now, which is kind of ironically weird, considering he stole our last chance at a Super Bowl. Now you advertise yourself as a fencing instructor and a movement instructor. How do those two things fit together?
Okay, so on the one hand, I'll hit the movement instructor part first because it'll make the other back end more obvious. So I do what's called the Feldenkrais method. It basically is a way of teaching yourself how to use yourself more effectively. So, for example, if somebody comes to me because they want off their cane or because they're elderly and having trouble getting around, I can get them to where they can walk around with their grandkids and not wear out. But it's based on efficiency. It's based on elegant movement, not just torturing your muscles until they scream. So while, for example, I can take a stroke off of almost anybody's golf score, what I focus on is fencing because it's really, really technical. If I have good basic technique in fencing, it counts a lot. I'm in my mid-50s, and I can play against somebody who's 30 years younger than me with absolute advantage if my technique is better than their technique. So understanding how movement works at a very deep level helps with that.
Yeah, that might help get Gen Z off my lawn. Maybe I should take up fencing. Old man jokes. But no, that's awesome. You can compete in that way. It sounds like it's not only a physical sort of aspect of a game, but very cerebral, where, it's kind of like physical chess, maybe. I don't know.
That is literally the metaphor that chess people use.
Really?
Absolutely.
See,
because I have a game and you have a game, and I roughly know what your plays are, and you roughly know what mine is, and which one of us can deceive each other to get a moment of time, which is what we call stealing a tempo, where I can whack you and you can't whack me back. If we just flail at each other like morons, that's ugly fencing that nobody wants to watch, and nobody's really winning. So figuring out how to deceive another completely competent person, sword in hand, is what makes sword play interesting and what keeps it interesting.
See, what I do is I just usually do that Indiana Jones scene when they come at me with a sword. I just say, I'm too tired for this shit, and I pull out a gun and just put them down.
See, then that's why the chain link's not going to work.
Well, the cops have to scale the fence first. That gives me time to run. So
okay.
There's a method to the madness. It's a plan. Don't shoot people. That's a joke. Don't create any cults off what Chris Voss says, please. We have enough cults. So you put out a number of these books besides translations. Do you want to give us maybe an overview about some of the other ones? Is there ways, like if I'm a beginner out there listening and I'm like, this sounds really interesting. Maybe I should see if this is maybe my kind of sport. Is there ways to get into it?
Absolutely. In fact, I coach a number of people online, a couple of whom don't have local coaches. Arlow, his pedagogy is amazing. He's one of the very few fencing guys that you can pick up a lot of the manuals and just literally go to town step by step by step by step, and you've got it. Some of the older Hungarian manuals are the same way. They're really, really clear. And if you take these manuals step by step, you can actually turn yourself into a very respectable fencer very quickly.
Yeah. Wow. And then I can impress the chicks. Put this on my Tinder, man. This should get me some fame. Or
scare your grandkids and chase them around the house.
Yeah, well, I don't have any kids, so they already met the sword. They already met the vasectomy sword.
Okay. Well, if your neighbors have kids, you can be the hero granddad of your block by chasing them around with swords.
I'm just still trying to get them off my lawn, so I just might chase them off the lawn with the sword. Now, you also have a YouTube channel. We should get a promotion for that if you want to plug that as well.
Absolutely. So I originally started with what we call a living lineage of Sabre. That is, it wasn't just from a book, but my coach is still alive. And on that channel, we have a playlist for the Arlow stuff, and I go into how to fence, how to learn how to fence, and a lot of the mindset issues that make someone successful or unsuccessful fencing. Can you give yourself permission to win? Can you get out of your own way? All of the soft skill things that approach how you learn to fence. And on the YouTube channel, we talk about those kinds of things.
And speaking of dating and maybe a way for me to get chicks on Tinder, you're known to be very vocal about encouraging women to fence. Why is that?
I am. And that's because fencing is technical enough that the conditioning plays a slightly lesser role. So Olympic fencing, the sport is set up in such a way that conditioning really counts. Either you get in the best shape you've ever been in your life, or you'll enjoy yourself, but you're not going to win. The historical fencing rule sets are a little bit easier that way, and you can be a middle-aged mother of 3, and not only can you have fun fencing, but you can win the tournament. You can go out there and absolutely kick ass because your technical ability matters. When you form an attack correctly, when you form a parry correctly, you're not wasting time. And the cleaner your technique is, the more you begin to get a tempo advantage on your opponent, what the fighter nerds would call the OODA loop. You're able to act inside their decision making, and you can get ahead of them. And from the outside, you look like you're blazingly fast. But what you actually are is more efficient. And anybody can be more efficient. So it's the only sport I know of that's both intensely physical and where men and women can compete with 100% equivalency, because fencing's an art of timing and technique. And anybody can learn that.
Yeah, so it's an equal opportunity sport. When I imagine there's official games or official tiers or where people get together and compete, do men and women usually compete against each other, or is it segmented by sex like a lot of sports these days?
So some historical fencing is segmented by sex, but often everybody's competing together.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes it nice. You don't have to have separate. You don't have to have the NBA and the WNBA, and you're like, which one am I watching now? And but yeah, it's kind of a beautiful art sport. I mean, when you see it, you're just like, wow, that's really cool. And I think there's kind of a hearkening of Renaissance and historical nature that, I don't know, we kind of possess in ourselves. So, there's something kind of romantic about it, I think.
Those movies that play with swords make a lot of money for good reason. People
people like the sword play, and we probably spent most of our human history, or at least a large part of it, that was the main weapon of choice or defense, was a sword, right?
Absolutely.
We hadn't invented Uzis yet. And so and you'd see people, I think there's a romanticism of that in we have a lot of novels on the show, and they write back in those eras, and the guys who are the knights and stuff, and swordplay of knights, and so there's a real thing to it. I've often looked at chainmail and swords, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to be on the back end of that thing in a war. Kind of glad I can just kind of stand back and shoot at people far away.
We stab our friends for fun, so no bleeding.
No bleeding. We're against the bleeding. Yeah, and do you have to wear the whole regalia, the hat, the helmet, hat, protection, and then the thick padding and all that stuff?
So some schools of fencing just make do with safety glasses, but yes, we wear the whole rattle battle, because if there's enough pressure, you don't want to bruise too badly, especially, for example, if you work with your hands.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want those too banged up, and you always wear a fencing mask for safety, because it's only one mistake in 1,000 that causes an incredible oops, but nobody wants to be on scene when that record scratch hits.
Yeah, you don't want to. I'm against taking swords to the chest. It's kind of a belief system I adopted a long time ago. So that's why I don't date women with daddy issues. Now, can you learn fencing from a book if someone reads your book?
In fact, Arlow and several of the others I've translated are actually clear enough that yes, you can. I have a couple of people who I've mentored here and there to help them with spots that aren't quite as clear, but simply working through the books, they've gone from losing on the regular to becoming absolute monsters their opponents have a hard time to hit.
Wow. And then people can engage with their Patreon. And what do they get over there? What do you offer them?
So some of it's body mechanics videos, but the rest of it is lots of one-on-one coaching. I coach 4 or 5 people a week on different forms of technique online and to improve how you're using your body. Most of the time when people are having trouble with the technique in the sport, it's because they're being asked to do something physically that they don't know how to do. If you're close to your existing habit, you pick up the technique really clearly. If you're far away from that habit, then it's harder to pick it up. So for example, if you're a keyboard monkey who slouches all the time and your shoulders are in this giant crunch all the time, moving your shoulders around freely may be a problem. But if I show you how to move your shoulders more effectively, you have an easier time performing the sport. So I help people where the movement and the techniques come together so they can do the things they want with more ease.
And all about probably technique. Mindset's probably a big thing, as it is pretty much in every sport, right?
Oh yeah, you're not getting away from mindset.
Yeah. It's all about your mind and practice and I mean they don't put just any sport in the Olympics, man. That's it's usually got to be something good. Except didn't they put surfing in?
Wrestling didn't make it.
Oh, that's too bad. That's just unfortunate. I just watching 2 guys grapple each other like a prison action doesn't really appeal to me. But it's just my opinion. Oh, I know. What else haven't we talked about? That I do a lot of MMA jokes about that. It just looks odd. Let's just put it that way. I don't really want to see guys grappling each other much, but some people love that thing. I mean, different strokes for different folks. Everybody's welcome to live their own life, I suppose, as long as there's consent. So
I did
I don't know why I find
for a while, but long-term fencing's a lot more fun for me.
you're not in some guy's butt looking in his tights,
While he takes your head and tries to screw it around like
exactly with his legs. I only like women that do that. So what else haven't we discussed about the sport of fencing? What can someone gain reading your books if they aren't into fencing?
Okay, so Arlow's fencing manual is a fencing manual. You'll get some cultural history out of that. It'll work. The books that are not related to fencing are primarily related to movement and how to make your life easier. For example, I was working with a gal. She's 82 years old, and she was having trouble with just some basic life stuff because she wanted to chase her grandkids around. So I wrote a book called Klutz Therapy, and it's just 10 habits that you can play with that will teach you how to use yourself better without having to make it into a turgid lesson. So you can deep dive lessons and get very serious about it, or you can take one habit and go, hey, what does this habit do for me? So for example, give your readers an example. If I'm trying to check my blind spots in the mirror, and we're coming of an age where you're worried about losing your driver's license because you can't crank your head far enough and the beep beep on the mirror isn't cutting it for you, I can turn my head and go, oh, I only turn my head so far. But if I take my left shoulder and pull it backwards, all of a sudden I can look so far behind me that it could actually be a bad idea because I could take my eyes right off the road.
Really?
Simply, try it. You'll see, my range of motion is actually huge.
Mine's
I try to turn my head and use my shoulder.
Wow.
So when you start seeing that there's lots of little things like that make your life easier, then you can keep doing the things you want to do. And fencing is just my application of that principle because I am a nerd who's been interested in all these old weapons since I was 8 or 9 years old. But like when I said I could take a stroke off somebody's golf game, that's real. I've taken minutes off people's miles the same way. When you figure out how to use yourself more effectively, you get more gain, less strain, which runs against what a lot of our society teaches us right now.
And I mean, range of movement is one of those things they talk about in, just making sure that you're spry. And, I mean, I'm one of those people I can sneeze and throw out my back, or you can sneeze and
that's the worst back injury. What happened to you? Oh, I sneezed because I
sneezed. Yeah, I never thought as I got older that I could injure myself. I've broken an arm once sneezing. No, I'm just kidding. But sometimes I wonder, man. It's like, and then I tend to sneeze in a series. Like I'll have like 6 or 10 of them. I don't know what it is. I just don't sneeze anymore. I don't know. I think I'm trying to lubricate something in my body to get it out of my system or something. Usually it's after some coffee, a lot of coffee. Maybe I'm drinking too much espresso. So as we go out, tell people how they can onboard with your different offerings that you do. Can they reach out to your website and get one-on-one consulting, things like that?
Absolutely, yes. So anybody can reach out, check out the YouTube, see if you like it. Anybody can go to the Patreon, get the coaching. If you are, and I see this on a very regular basis, interested in fencing and swordplay, but you don't have somebody local to teach you, I can coach you. And if it turns out we're not a great fit, I can point you at somebody else who can coach you. Because sometimes personality matters. But if you reach out to the Patreon, you can sign up on the unpaid version and just send a note saying, hey, I'm interested in this, help me out. I will be more than glad to do so.
And so you can basically teleteach fencing.
Yes, you can. And I've done so very successfully.
That's awesome, man.
In Germany, who I mentored right now, and he is podiuming left and right, and his students are doing the same.
Wow. And, good exercise, folks. Gives movement. Get out from behind those stupid screens and move your butt and, get some healthy exercise. And, one of the reasons I like playing video games that shoot is because, it helps me take out some of my aggression after driving in traffic for a while.
Try stabbing your friends. It gets out of
in a healthy way. This sounds like better because I can stab people and swing swords at them in real life.
Yeah, and you can fool your friends and snicker at them.
Can I invite my enemies to come?
Enemy fencing is different. You need the chain link for that.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Give us your .coms as we go out so people can check them out, Russ.
Okay, so youtube.com, Wing Sabre Historical Fencing, and Russ Mitchell, patreon.com, movement and fencing books and videos.
And I'm going to let you give the punch out on the book title as we go out. Go ahead and hit that.
Okay, so the book title we've been talking about is Sir Gusztáv Arlow's Sabre Fencing.
Austro-Hungarian Sabre
Series Volume 3.
Yep. And make sure you pick up the other 2 volumes so you can keep track of what's going on there. April 7th, 2022. Thank you very much, Russ, for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Nice to be here.
Thank you. And thanks, Johannes, for tuning in. I'm kind of interested in this. I'm going to go watch the James Bond thing. I realize it's probably, not real fencing, but boy, what a great entrance attraction thing. I mean, I always want to be James Bond. Maybe I'll learn some fencing to pick some chicks. That, or I can defend myself for when I piss off my girlfriend. And she goes through the knife, which is, on Fridays. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Check out his book and his interests wherever fine books are sold, and, expand your mind. There's all sorts of different things. There's a romanticism to this sort of deal. And, you never know. You might end up on the other side of a sword fight and the next time you're riding the bus, and you'll be able to defend yourself or defend your woman's chivalry or however that works. And all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out.